everyone, and welcome back to the TBM crew. Today, I'm with Jack Harding. Hello, Jack. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm so happy to have you here.
No, it's nice to be here. It's nice to meet you finally.
Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, from a writing perspective, I've only been writing for just over a year, and in that time, I've produced two books, two collections of short stories,
Mhm.
which seem to be doing sort of relatively well in all manner of things. I'm actually unemployed at the moment. I've recently left my job, just been laid off for
Yeah.
various reasons. But and in that time, yeah, I'm just going to take the summer, just doing a bit of writing, looking for a new job, and just chilling out really. So yeah.
That's amazing. And you have a release you had in May, right? Dark Lines.
Yes, that's right.
And
Yeah,
I think
beginning of
people
May.
are loving this book.
They seem to be, yeah, yeah. I've seen it around on Instagram, Twitter quite a bit. It seems to be doing quite well.
Mhm.
Similar to the first book, really, because they come out a little bit short space of time. So yeah, I'm pleased that it's going down quite well with people, and yeah, it seems to be doing all right.
Yes. And tell us about the book a bit. It's the shortest
Also,
stories. Are they related?
yes. No, well, to be fair, some of them tie into one another a little bit, but on the whole,
Mhm.
it's 16 short stories that are more or less unrelated. If I'm being honest, they explore a vast array of themes and subgenres within horror. So, I mean, there's a few ghost stories, a vampire stories, a creature feature,
Yes.
but on the whole, I mean, there's some supernatural stuff as well, but on the whole, they're more sort of psychological horrors, human horrors that deal with trauma and emotional sort of responses and things like that. So they're quite grounded, I would say, a lot of the stories, and I think there's a lot of sort of variation in there in terms of length and style. But yeah, there's some. I would say a lot of the stories border on being more sort of dark fiction
Mhm.
and possibly speculative. Psychological thrillers, if you will, as opposed to horror. But I
Yes.
think on the whole, it's been marketed as a collection of horror stories. So,
Mhm.
and that's what people seem to enjoy. So yeah, it's been great. I spent, I think it was from September through till February, writing the bulk of the stories and released a couple of them sort of
That's pretty
individually.
quick.
Yeah, it was. It was like
Yeah.
one a week. It was kind of a one a week deal because
Yes.
I just finished my first book and I was in a bit of a zone and I just wanted to keep going and experimenting
Mhm.
and yeah, it come together quite quickly. But I sort of took a step back after and thought, right, let's have a bit of a break before I go again on something. But no, the response has been really cool considering it's
Mhm.
only like my second book and yeah, people seem to be enjoying it so far. So it's great.
Yeah, sometimes these kind of books they are like a horror buffet because they are a story of each kind of horror.
Mhm.
It's a good way of people knowing you and knowing you as a writer.
I think so, yeah. And to be honest, there are a few of the stories in the book draw on my own experiences quite heavily.
Mhm.
So I was able to put a bit of personal effect into some of the tales and exaggerate it, obviously. But
Yes.
but yeah, no, I think there's a lot of me in the book, and I couldn't really do that in my first collection because it was based around sort of Jack the Ripper and Victorian London and things like that. So
Mhm.
I couldn't really do a lot in there. But no, with this, it's been fun to sort of experiment with different, like I said, styles and put bits of me in there and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Really, so
And that book about Jack the Ripper is Ripper Country, right?
that's right. Yep.
It sounds so fun. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it was fun to write. I
Yeah.
didn't really expect it to turn into like a collection. I only
Mhm.
started with one short story and then it just kept going. And those stories are actually tied into one another, so they're all sort of interlinked, and there is a chronological order to them, so to speak. So yeah, again, this is a booklet set in a sort of semi-alternate Victorian London, so there's some
Mm.
supernatural elements to it, and it doesn't so much focus on Jack the Ripper himself or herself, depending on what you believe, but it's sort of based around a set of fictional
Context.
characters. Context, yeah, I used it
Yes.
as a framing device
Mhm.
really, and or
Yes.
framework, and then built stories around this and told them from different perspectives. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to write. Again, there's a lot of different sorts of stories in there,
Mhm.
different length styles. There's poems, there's letters, and all sorts of things. There's cool illustrations, and yeah, it was a fun book to put together. I did not expect it to do as well as what it has done. So that was a lot of fun, and it obviously gave me the encouragement to go and do the second one, and obviously now the third. So yeah, it will always mean a lot to me because it was the first thing I attempted, and it seemed to have gone down all right. So yeah, very pleased.
That's awesome. It's very original, and I think that Victorian horror or Victorian dark fiction has a lot of fans. I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely. I
it's
think
so
a lot of
romantic.
yeah, there is that sort of weird like you said, romanticism with a time that was so terrible, and it's quite strange. But yeah, there's been a fascination, I think, with especially in audiences outside the UK. I don't know what that is or why. Obviously, there's a historical element to it, but yeah, I personally have always had an interest in the Jack the Ripper case and sort of Victorian London times, and I've read a lot of books from back then. And living in
Mm,
the UK, we kind of grow up with
yeah.
the works of like Charles Dickens and things like that being sort of drummed into you. So we're aware of like Jack the Ripper and Spring Hill Jack and all these sort of folk tales
Mm,
from an early age. So yeah, it wasn't something I'd thought about doing for years or anything like that. It just kind of happened. And then
mm,
before I knew it, I had like a 400-page book about it. So yeah, it's pretty wild. But yeah, again, this a lot of people seem to have really taken to this, probably more so than Dark Lines so far, but it's obviously
yeah.
been out a little bit longer. So, but yeah, it was a lot of fun to write, without a doubt.
And which style do you enjoy more? Because you have a bit of everything. Is there
Mhm.
anything that you like, especially writing about?
Um, Not yet, if I'm being honest. I would say I'm more leaning towards doing the more sort of psychological, dark
Mm,
thrillers as opposed to straight up gore and horror and slashers and things like that. I think that comes from a lot of what I read, to be honest, because I come into writing having read a lot of sort of Ray Bradbury, Richard Matheson,
mm-hmm,
Bret Easton Ellis, authors that sort of flitted across various genres, so be it sci-fi, horror, obviously, and obviously darker, more psychological stuff. So Stephen
mm,
King, obviously, as well, is the same sort of thing. So yeah, I would say the stuff I'm writing now for my third collection is less horror based, and when it comes to
mm-hmm.
being released, it will not be marketed as a horror book. It will be more
Yeah.
this sort of traumatic, almost like Black Mirror, like what
Yes.
ifs sort of things. So
Yes.
more psychological dark stuff. So yeah, I would say no. At the moment, I'm still trying various things, but I do see myself moving away actually from horror as a genre per se when
Mm.
it further down the
I
line,
don't know.
obviously.
Personally, I think maybe I'm completely wrong. But I have the feeling that us Europeans have a long history of the medieval era, Victorian era, all the very old buildings, castles, the Gothic style. As you said, that we grow up with these stories,
Hmm.
and I think that we tend to like more these kind of stories just because of a cultural thing, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
you see here, I spend the weekends with my kid visiting castles that they
Hmm.
are forsaken castles or they are just ruins, and they are so creepy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's and I think we are so influenced by that. I don't know how you
Definitely.
see it. It just
No, I agree. You're in Barcelona, aren't you? Is that
yes.
where you're based? Yeah, because there's loads of Gaudi like Gothic buildings, isn't there, around?
The
And yeah,
cathedral, a Sagrada
yeah,
Familia, yes.
I've been there several times. It's amazing. But no, I think you're right. I think even just looking out my window here, there's loads of like old style like arch
Yes.
chimneys and brick buildings and stuff like that. Yeah, we're surrounded by it. And I think whereas in the States, obviously history isn't as quite as long, and they don't have that. So that maybe that's why there's a fascination worldwide with this sort of thing.
Mm.
But yeah, obviously you go to London, which is only just down the road from me, and it's all still very prevalent. So yeah, I think there is definitely a lure to that sort of stuff
Yes.
for a lot of people.
And a question that maybe seems a bit silly, but do you watch movies?
Of
Because
course, yeah.
you'd be surprised of how many authors tell me that they don't. So
Really?
yeah, so I just ask first, do you watch?
Yeah. Oh
Or
God, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started when from a young age. I was always into
yes,
films before books,
yeah.
and that is always like my first love. I did film at college and university a little bit, and film studies that is. And yeah, that's when I'm actually writing. I picture what I'm writing almost as a film. Like the screenplay format is something
Yes.
that I actually use while writing in
Hmm.
a way, especially for dialogue and things like that. So, oh God, yeah, I would probably say on the balance of things, I'm more of a movie buff than I am a bookworm, really. Um, but it's just all time, isn't it? Really. But no, I do manage to watch quite a few horror films and various films on a regular basis.
Yes, and do you have a top three?
The top three films,
Yes.
I do, yes. So I think my favorite film is probably Back to the Future,
Hmm.
and then it's I would say The Thing, and
Hmm.
Jaws are probably
Yeah.
my three go-tos. But I could go on. It depends what day you ask me. I could say like, you know, Aliens, Jurassic Park,
Yeah.
The Exorcist. I've seen God knows how many
Yes.
times. So yeah. What about you? What about yourself?
Oh, it's
Put
difficult.
you on
It's
the
difficult
spot.
to say because I always have I have my heart is divided between cheesy horror that I love
Right.
it
Yeah.
and the actual scary movies. Because for example, I love The Evil Dead. I'm a
Yep.
super fan of The Evil Dead because I find it super funny. So I would say maybe that's my top three.
Yeah.
But
Is
it's
that the first one? Is it or the
yes.
second one? Yeah.
I think it would be one of the first. I think maybe the first because I love it,
Yeah.
but because it's funny. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure it should be in a top three of horror.
No, no, I agree. I mean, American Werewolf in London is like one of my favorite horror films, and
Yeah.
that's like more of a comedy. Really, it depends
Yes.
on how you look. Depends on how you look at it. I've watched The Evil Dead 2 with a lot of people, and they thought it went, but then other
Mhm.
people thought it's hilarious. So yeah, it does depend.
Yes.
But yeah, I would say that's fine
Yes.
to have
Actually,
that.
the first movie of The Evil Dead, it was supposed to be serious,
Mm,
but people just found it funny, so they turned it like cheesier and cheesier and cheesier.
yeah.
It's then I have it sounds like a cliche, but to me, one of the that I have here stuck is The Ring,
Yep.
because one teacher played it at the school when we were 13 years. So
Wow.
I didn't sleep in 2 years.
Wow. That's
So
pretty intense.
if I had watched it now or a little ago for the first time, I would say, okay, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to me, it's terrifying because I still have that feeling from when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah, it stays with you. I had that with the Blair Witch Project. Like that was the number one. I watched it
Exactly.
when I was like 14, 15, and it scared the hell out of me. And
That's an
it sort
amazing
of
one, eh?
it stays with you. Yeah, we had a few. We didn't watch it at school, but it was around.
Welcome
Like
to
the tape
Spain.
was going around. I was going to say, yeah, that's strange. But I know Spanish horror has been quite good in recent years. One of my favorite films is Record or Rec. I don't know how that
Yes, yes.
translates. I thought that was absolutely fantastic.
Hmm.
And I think they did a bunch of them, but I didn't carry on with them. But that's
Yeah.
a great film.
Hmm. It's like the Saw series that
Yeah, yeah,
there's like 1,000 of them. There's a lot of them. Yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult to know. And then I was thinking now in the school, there was a school here. Then because I've been teaching English to some kids here, and
hmm
suddenly they told me that they had watched Insidious at the school, but they are 10 years old. And I was like, what? Because
that's crazy.
yeah, they told their parents, but they don't know what Insidious is because here horror is not a thing for the average people. You know that you have to
Wow.
be very freak to know what that is. And
Okay.
so we watch a movie. Oh, which is it? Insidious. Ah, cool. I said, no, cool. No, I mean, it's terrible. You know. And but for example, I like Insidious. Now that I talk about it, and but these are more modern ones. Do you have
Mhm.
any actual sorry, current movie now that is from the last years that you like? That it's very different from the 80s, but
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy obviously Insidious. I thought the second one was pretty good as well, and things like The
yes.
Conjuring and
The Conjuring too, yeah.
the I always forget the name. Is it Sinister? The one with the they did a
Yes.
couple of them again. They're good, and I haven't obviously I know Ethan Hawke is doing quite a lot of those, doing Black Phone and all things like that. So
Mhm.
no, I really want to see the new Candyman. That's on my list because I love the original. I've heard
I
good things
did
about the new one.
watched it.
Yeah, what did you think?
I think that he's too handsome to be scary.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you can't be scared by a man like that. It's like, oh, I'm in your team. You know?
Oh, okay. No,
Yeah.
that's on my list. But I'm trying to think. I think I enjoyed like Us, and obviously a lot of people talk about Get Out and things like that. So I'm more of a fan of like the 80s based
Yeah.
stuff, right up as far as probably things
I
like
think we all
Scream.
are.
Yeah, there's a
Yes.
bit of a nostalgia there, isn't there? But that said, I did enjoy the new Scream as well as a fun
Hmm.
switch your
Yeah.
brain off kind of film. But
Mm.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see where things go now. But that said, I would say that the best thing horror based I've seen in the sort of cinema film world would be Midnight Mass. I don't know if you can count that as obviously being a season, but that for me hit a lot of marks. It felt like an older production than a newer sort of horror thing, and I think it was quite almost difficult to ascertain when it was set. It felt like it could have been set in the 70s, 80s with all the music and stuff like that. So yeah, that would probably be right up there for me. But no, film wise, I can't even remember the last time I went to the cinema to see an actual horror film. I couldn't put my finger on what it would even have been. I honestly can't remember, but I need to sort that out. But no, definitely more of a fan of the older stuff, but I'm never gonna turn away from the newer things because you never know.
And and do you have any movie that has disappointed you so much? The big disappointing movie?
Yeah, well, loads, but I would say that for horror wise, the Thing remake that they did a few years ago, or it wasn't even a remake, it was like a prequel. It was just so pointless and awful, and they tried to. It was terrible. It was terrible. I'm trying to think. I recently watched House of Gucci. I don't know if we can discuss that on a horror channel. I thought that was terrible. It went over about 5 days, and it had no point. But yeah, it's one of those. I think the older you get, I used to watch anything when I was younger. I'd watch absolutely anything, and obviously you open yourself up to whether things are good or bad. Now I'm more careful, and I would say, okay, this is meant to be good. Let's watch this. But yeah, I honestly, off the top of my head, can't think of too many others. I've watched a few poor films. I think there was a film I watched on Netflix not too long ago called Wrong Turn. I know they'd done a Wrong Turn years ago about like like sort of hillbillies or like a deliverance feel to it, but this one was completely different, and it was an odd film. It was in sometimes it was good, and other times it was just flat out weird. And in the end, I was like, what have I just watched? I don't know. But no, on the whole, like I said, I tend to be quite careful and cherry pick what I watch these days.
Yeah, sometimes it happens the opposite. Sometimes because sometimes I enter in Netflix or Amazon Prime and choose a horror movie that I don't know about, that maybe they are old, not 80s old, but maybe 10 years old. And sometimes they surprise me. I think, well, let's see this one, that it doesn't have many views, or, well, let's try. And it's an amazing movie who no one knows. or just the opposite. They are just plain boring. And I just change it.
Yeah, I do actually, funnily enough, get that with quite a lot of sort of Dario Argento films, where the older sort of attached, some of it's great, like Suspiria, and other things I can't even remember them off the top of my head, like Deep Red, I think one of them's called. It's just it's extremely dated. But I did have a film then that popped into my head that I watched, and again, it's kind of Prometheus. That I had a big thing against Prometheus when that came out, because I'm a big fan of like the Alien films and thought they were fantastic. And when this was coming out, I had such high expectations. I think that's another thing, you can go in expecting something incredible, and then it's just that I couldn't stand that film. I've tried to watch it several times since as well, giving it another chance, and it gets worse every time.
Let's see if this time is better.
No, and it never is.
Now, what I didn't watch that I would like to, because everyone was saying that it's awful, is the Texas Massacre, the new one that they made.
Yeah.
Have you watched it?
I have, yeah. And
what do you think?
I wouldn't watch it again. And it was very for lack of a better word, stupid. It was just I could see what it was trying to do. And again, this kind of felt like a satire almost, like it was trying to say something. And yeah, it was a ridiculous film. But again, if you just want to put something on for an hour and a half and just switch off, even if you get a bit angry, because it's not nowhere near as good as the originals, but it's not the worst film I've ever seen. But it wasn't great, and I've heard it's not being very well received. It's just it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, well, it's to emulate a classic like that, it's very risky.
I tried it several times. I think they've done loads of different variations of it and trying to bring it up to date and stuff. And I know they've done it with Halloween as well to some success. But I remember when I went to see the one they done a few years ago, I think it was just called Halloween, and it was bringing it 40, 50 years, however many years back into the future. And I was just like, man, I get the nostalgia thing, and at least with Scream they're trying to do something a bit different. But yeah, there seems to be a big comeback now of some of these older films. I've heard lots of talk of them trying to remake The Exorcist and things like that, and that was not going to sit well with a lot of people. So we'll see. But yeah, wasn't a great fan of the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but love the original. I don't think there's an awful lot wrong with it. Even the second one, which was a bit weird, was still quite good. So yeah.
And now, changing the subject, that I had a teacher that told me I have a squirrel brain, and for a lot of years I thought he was saying I was stupid, and what he was saying is that I jump from one branch to the other into.
I see. Yeah, yes. No, I see what you mean. Squirrel
but
brain.
I thought squirrels have little brains, right? So, what would be your advice to someone who starts writing? Because you have been amazingly embraced by readers, just jumping on the ship. So what would be your advice for someone who says, hey, I want to write?
It's obviously hard for me to give advice, because I think that the way I started is different to maybe a lot of people, because I think a lot of people start out wanting to try and write a novel, or they have a story in mind that's quite maybe too large or complicated, or it's got many layers or whatever. I guess my advice to anyone would be to start small, to start short. Again, it works for me because I have a squirrel brain as well. I jump about. I have one idea and I move to the next thing, and then even when I write, my style of writing is very weird in that I start with the beginning, but I jump around quite a lot in the sort of linear narrative sort of concept of the story, and I'll come back, meet myself in the middle, and I'm a bit all over the place, a bit erratic. But I would say that working within a short story framework helped me just, I guess, slowly become a better storyteller by keeping it short and experimenting, and try one thing for a couple of weeks, then come away from it, then work on something else. Whereas I think if you were to go straight into working on a big piece or a novel, you could spend a very long time writing it, and at the end maybe not have something you're either happy with or something that you give up on. Whereas with a short story, I feel you can sharpen your tools that way. And I would also say just to read as much as you possibly can. It sounds, a bit obvious, but I've read so much going into before I started writing. I actually don't read as much now, but beforehand I read so many different authors and short stories, long stories from all over the years, and just tried to absorb as much of it as I could, and then started to at first maybe emulate a little bit of what I was reading, but then develop my own style as I go. So I think it's different for everyone. I think some people can just sit down straight away and crack on with a big story or a novel, and that's great. But for me, I found a lot of satisfaction, and I suppose I got a lot out of just working small to begin with, and after several weeks I'd written maybe 3 stories, and then I would go back over them and say, okay, what improved in the second one to the third one, and just sort of read it in that way. So yeah, I don't know if that is advice, but for me, like I said, it worked well trying to start smaller. And with my first book, actually, I think there's 10 stories in there in total, and I didn't write them in necessarily any order, but come the final story, which I knew was going to be the last story in the book, that was by far the longest, and it's still the longest thing I've written. I think that was about 20,000 words, which I think is like it's not quite a novella, but it's like a novelette length. And I felt, because I'd had, although 9 stories doesn't sound like a lot, I'd had 9-10 weeks worth of solid short story writing behind me to then attempt something bigger, and I felt a bit more comfortable in doing it. But that's just me. That's just how I how I come to do it. So yeah, I suppose keep it short, and that advice actually comes from one of my favorite authors, Ray Bradbury, who would always speak to writing students and say that just absorb as much as you can, and write as many short stories as you can. Try different styles and different ways of doing things, and through time you would naturally develop your own style and methods, and they may work for some people, maybe not for others. And again, I think as well, another thing that works for me may not for other people is I've never been one to sort of sit down all day at a laptop and lock myself away. And I know you can treat it like a job, and that there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but I tend to write in short, sharp bursts. I'll spend maybe an hour or two, and then I'll come away, and then I'll go back, and then I'll I'll almost let it sort of percolate in my mind as I'm developing it. I'll take plenty of breaks, because I think just working constantly at something, I just don't seem to, it doesn't seem to work for me, but I think for a lot of people it does.
Because
there is
your brain is a squirrel brain.
Exactly. I need to give the squirrel a rest and sort of just go to one side. And I also find I do my best stuff sort of in the morning as well, because I've had like a decent amount of time away, and I wake up and then I've maybe got some fresh ideas, and then I'll write for a couple of hours, leave it, come back, leave it, and I'll do that not every day, but that tends to be my method. I don't know whether it would work for a novel, but for short stories it seems to fit me pretty well. There is a name for doing it that way. I forget what it's called. I did see it not too long ago. It's I can't remember what it was called. That method of just sort of stepping back and figuring out your ideas and come back to it fresh with it. There is a name for it. I can't remember. It's building something up. I can't remember.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess that would be my advice. If anyone is starting, is just try and keep it short and work your way up to it. And I suppose you could argue that's what chapter writing is in novels and stuff, but I think by doing a short story you can get your beginning, your middle and an end all in there, and you can sort of look down and say, okay, how well have I told that story? Because I look back on things I wrote about a year ago now, and I think, I could have done that better, like with the methods I've developed now. And I think that's natural. But
yeah, that's experience.
Sorry, that's a bit long. I do but I would say keep it short, keep it simple.
Well, that's a very good advice, because maybe when someone starts like this, writing, or we could say cooking or drawing, and anything, any wall you jump in, maybe you have these expectations in your mind, like this image of who you want to be, and maybe you don't experiment enough, or you don't try, you are not inspired enough, you need more material. Sometimes we're so stubborn that we want to get there, that we don't take our time to master all the tools we need to do it. So it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a very good advice. Maybe someone is stuck trying to do something. I need to write a novel because I want to be a novel writer.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not the case. Maybe you need to start with your shorter stories and develop your style. Because if you have so many shorter stories, then you have lots of characters. How do you develop your characters? Do you have a process for that?
Yes, I guess a lot of the time with the characters, even if it's a main character in which the story is based around, I do tend to let it develop as I go through. I've never really go in thinking, okay, I'm going to do a story about this sort of person. It tends to be more about the story itself, and then I'll put bits in there, from myself and things I've seen in movies and all these sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about that. I suppose I think I've done about maybe 40 stories, and God knows how many characters across those so far.
Lot.
It is for the last year, and I'm still going. I'm writing 2 at the moment, and funnily enough, the 2 I'm writing at the moment are sort of hark back to when I was a teenager. So I'm sort of looking back at what I was like then and using that as a framework to build the stories. But no, typically, I guess I can't really explain it. I do a lot of research around not people, but just general research before I'm writing, or while I'm writing anything, and you just develop these characters sort of as you go. So I honestly don't know. I think it's just one of those things that just tends to happen. I'll think a lot about the sort of character I want to create and who they are and all these things. I'll have a backstory in my mind, but I don't have a process as such. It just sort of I wouldn't say it comes to me or anything like that, but I guess it does. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, it would be great to work towards a novel at some point. I don't feel as if I'm ready though to not necessarily write one, but to be in the mindset to focus long enough to be able to work on one story. And I did actually think, because I knew I was going to be off work throughout the summer, I thought, that'd be a great time to watch a novel. But to watch a novel, to write a novel, but I just keep going with the short stories. I can't help it. I've just got loads of little ideas that I want to keep
who knows, maybe some of these stories will develop in bigger books.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, my partner has said that, like, when you do something bigger, it might just be expanding on something you've already done. Yeah, why not? So we'll see. yeah, for now I think I'll just keep going with the shorter stories and see what happens. But yeah, for me, I think going back to like the advice thing, another thing I'd say as well is, in the beginning I did feel as if I was maybe subconsciously trying to emulate the styles and things of some of my favorite authors, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I felt it was maybe a bit too, in places I was being a bit too wordy and it was a bit too overcomplicated, and some of my sentences were maybe a bit too long, and no one's as harsh a critic of my own stuff as I am, and now I'm writing with more of a shorter sort of style, and that's just developed over time. So I think simplicity, I think at this stage, is key, and you can layer those more complicated, prose and connections in as you go. But yeah, I think horror is a good genre to start writing as well, because you have to suspend obviously all logic, all belief, and go from there. And I think again that's maybe why I'm a little bit more confident in writing stuff that's maybe a little bit more grounded now. So yeah, but different strokes for different people. I think everyone's different. So yeah,
there will be always that person that doesn't like your work. I mean, you have to write for yourself, I guess.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think in the beginning I said that, like, to my partner when I said I'm going to attempt, I'm going to start working on these stories, and I want to do it in the style that I would enjoy reading myself. I know it sounds a bit silly. I'd never write something that I'm not going to enjoy reading back myself. But initially it wasn't. I had no, I didn't think I would sell thousands of books and things. It was just, I'll do it to see if I can do it. And I read it back and I was like, I enjoyed reading that. And it's weird because you get so, I'm sure plenty of writers have said this, you get so involved with what you're working on, you can't read it objectively. But as time goes by, you go back, and I've just had a couple of audiobooks of my earlier stuff sent to me from a publisher, and I've listened to them and I was like, I can't believe, like, that actually sounds like a story. It actually has it makes sense. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, you got to try and detach yourself from it, but it's difficult, especially in the early stage when you're so eager to keep going and keep doing more stories and things, and obviously you're having fun doing it as well. So that's why I do it. The second it starts becoming like a chore, I'll probably stop, because I don't want that, unless I'm getting paid to do it, or paid good money to do it. But no, for now it's just going to keep going and see where we are.
Yes. We're running out of time. It's so lovely to talk to you.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, where can readers find you? Where can we find you?
So I started on Instagram. That's where I originally sort of started getting into all of this. So I'm on Instagram. I think my handle is rocket.man.reads. I will be changing that at some point, but that's what it is for now. All my stuff is on Goodreads as well. Just search me, Jack Harding, Amazon, and that's where I think the majority of my stuff's being sold at the moment. And Book Funnel is there, but no, Instagram is like my base, if you will. And I'm on Twitter, but it's very early days. I haven't really got going with it yet. So yeah, Instagram is where I sort of do most of my book reviews and stuff.
We will link everything below. We will give all the links. And do you have a final message for our audience?
Final message. Oh God. No. No. Well, just send me a message if you've never seen anything I've done or read anything I've deen before, and I've got signed copies of my books. I can always hook you up. But no, keep reading. If you're writing, keep writing, and yeah, bit embarrassed, don't know what to say, but yeah.
Okay, then thank you so much for your time. It's been so lovely to talk to you. I was looking forward to it because I've been following you for a while on Instagram and all about Dark Lit Press and Dark Lines and all of that. So, and he's so nice for everyone hearing. He's so nice. You can reach him out.
Yeah. I'm well. I've got a lot of time on my hands now as well. So just hit me up whenever. But no, it's lovely speaking to you. It's really it's a pleasure being on, and have a nice day, and I'll speak to you again at some point, hopefully. Yes, of course. Then thank you so much, and have a lovely day. And you. Speak to you later. Bye bye.